Here we are moving on to the summary of aggression, a quick recap of all these topics which we have covered during the previous one or three videos. Behavioral display as an evidence for conflict. There are four lines of evidence in which a behavioral display is interpreted as conflict. The situation. First one is the situation. The situation of behavioral display is important for its consideration as a component of the conflict. For example, the animal near its territorial boundary always remain in frightened and aggressive. But when the presence of potential mate may arouse its sexual motivational system. The behavior accompanying a display. First one was the situation. There are four lines of evidence in which an behavioral display is interpreted as conflict. First one is the situation. Second one is the behavior accompanying a display. The behavior accompanying a display is important as it may or may not be due to conflicting tendencies. For example, an animal may express approach and retreat from its rival. It may also show color changes as a result of sexual motivation. The behavior preceding display. The behavior preceding a display is assessed to interpret display as a conflict behavior. The nature of the display. The posture of the animal during a behavioral display is one of the important points that distinguishes a behavior as a conflict behavior. Types of conflict behavior. The two behavioral movements conflicting each other cannot be expressed simultaneously. They cannot be expressed simultaneously. The behavior observed in an animal in conflict is just very different from its normal behavior. Following types of conflicting behavior can be seen in animals under conflicting situations, which are the displacement activities. In conflicting situations, new behavioral patterns emerges which is apparently unrelated to the normal preceding type. It is irrelevant and defined as the displacement activity. For example, a male three-spined stickleback fish, while courting an unreceptive female, suddenly swims to its nest and performs fanning movements. It is evident even when there are not eggs it is nest to care. Male still coins to nest in between his crotch behavior. This is regarded as a displacement activity. This is a displacement activity as it remains unrelated to the preceding normal behavior. In another case, it has been observed that chickens preen more they had woken up or are able to go to sleep in the roost. Fighting gulls may show grass pulling in the middle of fight. All these are displacement activities. Displacement activities happen during the fight. Characteristics of displacement activities. It is apparently an irrelevant behavior. That is not something which, very pleasing to do in between a fight, but that's an irrelevant behavior. It emerges in intermediate context of the two conflicting motivational systems. Grass pulling in the lesser black-backed gull, a male faces its rival across the boundary between their territories, interspaced with bouts of throat or actual fighting. They seize grass or turf and tug at it flamboyantly, deliberately choosing material that will resist their efforts. It occurs in absence of any eliciting stimulus. It remains unrelated to the preceding behavior. First one was the displacement activity. Now let's see what are the characters of displacement activity. It is apparently an irrelevant behavior as we have mentioned earlier, and it emerges in intermediate context of the two conflicting motivational system. It emerges in intermediate context of the two conflicting motivational system, and it occurs in absence of any eliciting stimulus. It can happen without any eliciting stimulus. It remains unrelated to the preceding behavior. It remains unrelated to the preceding behavior. Hypothesis regarding causation of displacement activities. Overflow hypothesis. Tinbergen assumed that two motivational systems in a conflict situation result in outflow or sparking over of energy that leads to activation of a third motivation system, which is responsible for the appearance of an irrelevant or displacement behavior. Next one is the disinhibition hypothesis. It assumes that two behavioral tendencies which are in conflict inhibit one another. By doing so, a third motivational system is activated, leading to expression of an irrelevant behavior. Paul's concepts. Rowell in 1961 worked out approach avoidance conflict in chaffinches. He generalized his study and proposed that the displacement activity in animals occurred when there are three following conditions are met together. So according to this concept, the two conflicting conditions must be arrived at equilibrium. The equilibrium should be long lasting. The normal activity of the animal remains guided by the external stimuli. The normal activity of the animal remains guided by the external stimuli. The normal activity guided by the animal. The normal activity of the animal remains guided by the external stimuli. McFarland's hypothesis. M.C. Farland put forward a hypothesis which is a variant of the disinhibition hypothesis. According to him, a motivational conflict was not necessary condition for the displacement activity. Working with 30 Barbary does, M.C. McCland made a distinction between irrelevant activities during the conflict and sorting. He noted that in the conflict between two behavioral tendencies, a displacement of animals' activity was brought about by disinhibition, as stated earlier. But displacement in a thwarting situation was a switch of attention from the inaccessible goal to another object. Now, the neurophysiological approach. Any stimulus perceived by the CNS or brain evokes two types of response. First one is the type where it activates specific loci of the brain. And it also stimulates activation of the reticular formation, which comprises a diffuse series of fiber tracts. It also stimulates activation of the reticular formation, which comprises a diffuse series of fiber tracts. Via cortex, these reticular formations affect the arousal in an animal, which result in some irrelevant or displacement activities. For example, stimulation of specific loci in the brain results in displacement activities such as preening and sleeping in gulls. Most probably, the displacement activities are direct consequences of changes in the physiology of animal that may be brought about by some external factor. Now let's learn about the redirecting activities. This is another type of performance of animal during conflict situations. Here a third motivational system is also aroused as a result of two conflicting tendencies. Instead, one of the two motivational system will conflict is redirected toward an object other than which stimulated them. For example, hearing girl in conflict during aggressive encounters redirect their pecking on objects in the environment rather than enemy. Now let's learn about the alternation movement. Alternation movement. Sometimes an animal in conflict alternates its behavioral pattern between two conflicting tendencies. Two conflicting tendencies. An animal desiring to approach a food source but frightened to do so alternates its movements between approach and avoidance movement. That is the alternation movement. Now the intention movement. The intention repeats a modified form of behavioral movement during the conflict behavior. Flying of a bird, for example, is preceded by some events indicated by its readiness to fly. The particular events in this case are crouching of bird, withdrawal of head, and raising of its tail, etc. During conflict, these movements are repeated as such or in a modified form. Now let's learn about the ambivalent behavior. Sometimes the animal in conflict maintains its posture in a way to contain both types of behavioral tendencies. For example, in ruminants, cow, and when offering an unusual food, while position of neck and head express approach towards the food, the leg and weight of it are positioned in a way to facilitate immediate withdrawal from the source. Confident approach and non-confident approach. Demonstration of ambivalent behavior by cow. Now the next one is about the compromise behavior. This is similar to ambivalent behavior. However, unlike ambivalent behavior, here only one behavior pattern is expressed, which is for both the tendencies in conflict. So we have learned about the types of conflict behaviors. First one is the displacement activities. Next comes the redirected activities, then the alternation movements, intention movements, ambivalent behavior, and compromise behavior. Redirected activities, alternation movements, intention movements, and ambivalent behavior. Now let's learn about the prolonged conflict. Prolonged conflict is the natural state for the wild animals for much of their lives. While sometimes decisions have to be made at once. For example, delaying escape from an approaching predator would be strong by selected against. There are many other occasions where when it is much better to wait and collect information before a decision is made. This is particularly true in social situations where animals may take considerable time to access each other or assess each other. So that is all about prolonged conflict. And this is particularly true in social situations where animals may take considerable time to assess each other. For example, red deer stags may take half an hour or more to assess each other's fighting ability before deciding whether to attack or flee. The roaring matches and parallel walking are used by the stags, indicators of the likely outcomes of a real fight, and mean that animals remain in a state of continuous motivational conflict while they gather the relevant information. Even escape from predators may be preceded by a period of lengthy assessment. Prey animals do not flee every time a predator appears, but wait up the risk that a predator will attack against the loss of feeding time they would gain by moving away. Zebras watch hyenas carefully and are much more likely to flee on some days than others, apparently sensitive to small differences in the hyena's behavior and the size of the hunting group that indicates what prey the hyenas are after on any one occasion. Such adaptations are highly adapted but take time to make. The motivational conflict is resolved only when eventually the new information received tips the balance of causal factors in the direction of one behavior or other. Conflict behavior and animal husbandry. Understanding of the conflict behavior among domestic animals is of great significance for the welfare of cattle, fowls, and other domesticated animals. Thus, a study of their behavior patterns serve as a useful guide to look into their frustration and problems. It is therefore necessary to get the best results out of livestock. Now, let's move on to the next topic, that is the vacuum activities. When very highly motivated animals sometimes carry out behavior even when the appropriate stimuli are not present. Lawrence described the case of Starling, which went through all the movements of catching and eating an insect even though no insect was present. So the behavior was performed in vacuum, hence kept in wire floored cages, sometimes go through all the movements of dust bathing even though there is nothing for them to dust bathe. Two activities are mentioned here. First one is the dust bathing, next one is the fly eating behavior. In case of starlings, these are some sort of frustrated behaviors. Now let's learn about aggression in detail. Aggression is a group of behavioral activities including threat postures, rituals, and occasionally physical attacks on each other organisms other than those associated with predation. They are usually directed towards members of the same sex and species and have various functions including the displacement of other animals from the area, usually a territory or a source of food, and the defenses of mate or offspring or establishment of rank in a social hierarchy. So aggression is something which is usually directed towards members of the same sex. It's seen between the members of the same sex and species. Okay, that's it. So the term aggression is controversial and suggested an existence of unnecessary violence within animal groups. The alternative term, agonistic behavior, is preferable. Now, agonistic behavior in detail. Behaviors usually lumped as agonistic are among the most frequently studied of all animals and human activities because of their distinctness and evident significance in the lives of social animals. Defined agonistic behavior as a complex behavior including attacks, threat, submissive, and fleeing behaviors. He pointed out that such a concept is useful because of the presence of simultaneous tendencies to attack and to flee and the associated assurance of threat behavior. Manning used the term agonistic behavior to cover all different types of responses seen in fighting and territorial behavior. According to Dewsbury, agonistic behavior encompasses a wide range of behavioral patterns related to inter-animal conflict, including fighting, defensive behavior, fleeing, and freezing. Freezing is also involved there. Or not only fleeing, but freezing is also there. Okay. Agonistic behavior is an alternate term for Aggressive behavior, which refers simply to frightening and competitive behavior, usually in animals, and includes threats and offensive attacks as well as defensive fighting. Agonistic behavior tend to occur in situations involving conflict or competition for space, resource, males, or status for the protection of self or young. Aggression to a broad sense to cover various ranges from over fighting to supposed symptoms of boldness or confidence. She viewed conflict between animals in terms of three main situations between members of the same species: social aggression, hunting and stacking as shown by predator towards the prey, predatory aggression, and attack on a potential predator by a prey species, anti predatory aggression. ഏതൊക്കെ ടൈപ്പിലാണുള്ളതെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ predatory aggression is also there and anti-predatory aggression is also there. So aggression and agonistic behavior. Some definitions of aggression include predatory behavior in which the animal being attacked is eaten in the process. Psychologists give defined aggression as behavior that appears to be intended to inflict noxious stimulation or a destruction on another organism. The notion of purpose is necessary to exclude such destructive behavior as a male elephant seals tramping a pup while trying to copulate with the mother. Use of the word aggression as a form of resource competition in which an animal actively excludes rivals from some resource such as food, shelter, or mates. Agonistic behavior is a system of behavior patterns with the common functions of adjustment situations of conflict among conspecific animals. And the term includes all aspects of conflicts such as threats, submissions, clashes, and physical compact, but it specifically and significantly excludes predatory aggression since, according to some scientists, ingestive behavior is a part of separate behavioral system with a different function. Ethologists have listed following forms of aggressive behavior: territorial aggressive behavior, in which takes place expulsion of others from same physical space. Dominance: in this type of aggressive behavior, controls of conspecific as a result of a previous encounter is done. Sexual aggressive behavior: in this case, use of threats and physical punishment, usually by males to obtain and retain males. Parental aggressive behavior: in this case, attacks are made on intruders when young are present. Which are the types? Territorial aggressive behavior, dominance, sexual aggressive behavior, and parental aggressive behavior, along with the parental offspring aggressive behavior. Then comes the predatory aggressive behavior. Predatory aggressive behavior. Parent offspring aggressive behavior is something which is a disciplinary action by parent against offspring, mostly by mammals, usually associated with warning. Predatory aggressive behavior, it includes the act of predation, possibly including cannibalism. Anti-predatory aggressive behavior is also there, which includes the defensive attack by prey on predators such as mobbing. Most agonistic behavior include competition for some limited resources, food, water, access to a member of opposite sex, or space for nesting, wintering, or safety from predators, etc. Territorial aggressive behavior, dominance, sexual aggressive behavior, parental aggressive behavior, parent offspring aggressive behavior, and predatory aggressive behavior and anti-predatory aggressive behavior. Now let's learn about the causes of aggression. The various causes of aggression have been categorized under the following two headings: endogenous factors of aggression, role of hormones. Aggressive behavior in animals appear to be associated with the breeding periodicity. Males become comparatively more aggressive with the onset of the breeding activity. Androgen levels are responsible for aggressive behavior in many species. The effect of androgen on aggressiveness are via its effect on lowering the threshold for aggression. Ingestion of testosterone restore aggression in castrated animals. There are other hormones which influence aggression in animals because it has been found that male hormone does not completely regulate aggression. In fact, castrated individuals may often exhibit aggression. In some species, estrogens do affect aggression to some extent. In fact, in some species, estrogens enhance aggressiveness, LH or luteinizing hormone, LH, luteinizing hormone, LH is the luteinizing hormone in starring and African beaver birds controls aggressiveness. Similarly, prolactin and progesterone seems to manipulate aggressiveness. Levels of ACTH also influence aggression. High levels of ACTH or the adrenocorticotropic hormones reduce and low levels change aggressive behavior. The effect of hormone to aggression is mediated by the brain. Invertebrate hormones are much different from those of vertebrates and much less is known about how they work. Most of our information comes from crustaceans and insects. Males of many species of crustaceans have enlarged claws used for display and fighting. Development of this claws seems to be under the influence of a hormone produced by androgenic glands near the testis. Large glands produce more hormones, which leads to a larger claws and greater fighting efficiency. In juvenile lobsters, levels of aggression are related to the molt stage. When levels of the molting hormone ecdysterone is high, aggression is low. This makes sense because after a molt, the exoskeleton is soft and animals are vulnerable. Once the shell hardens and the animal competes for a shelter for the next molt, aggression is high. Among insects, the paired corpora alata, neurosecretory glands in the head, produce substances called juvenile hormones. Something called as the juvenile hormones. Juvenile hormones. In grasshoppers, females shift from responding aggressively to males to become sexually receptive under the influence of juvenile hormones. If the corpora alata are removed, female continue to reject males. To male field crickets, corpora alata are removed. Females continue to reject male. So if you are constantly rejecting males in case of grasshoppers, you can see that its corpora alata is being removed by some experiments. In male field crickets, however, removal of the corpora alata had no effect on agonistic behavior. Some scientists indicated and implied both juvenile hormones and ecdysteroids in the establishment of dominance hierarchies and female pepper wasps as they initiate nests in the spring. Subordinate female have lower levels of juvenile hormone and reduced gonad development. Now let's learn about the neural mechanisms. The vertebrate brain structure most involved in aggressions are part of limbic system, which includes structures such as the amygdala, the vertebrate brain structures most involved in aggression are part of limbic system, which includes structures such as amygdala and the hypothalamus. Amygdala and hypothalamus are involved, which are part of limbic system. Role of hypothalamus in aggression. The hypothalamus is involved in defense and escape behavior in a wide variety of vertebrates. ranging from fish to primate. Using lesions, electric stimulation, and single neuron recording from specific areas of the brain, researchers have found that different brain sites are responsible for different types of aggression. For example, in cats, electric stimulation of the ventromedial nucleus of the hypothalamus produce growling, hissing, and attacking with claws, defensive attack. But stimulation of the lateral hypothalamic area produces the biting attack with no defensive elements. Now let's learn about the role of amygdala and midbrain in aggression. Areas of the brain that are involved in predatory aggression are the amygdala of the forebrain and the central gray of the midbrain. These areas are connected by nerve pathways and they interact. For example, electric stimulation of certain areas in the thalamus causes cats to attack rats. Tail stimulation, the use of radio transmitters permitting electrical stimulation of specific brain areas in semi-natural social groups. Monkeys with electrodes implanted in certain parts of thalamus, hypothalamus, or central gray become aggressive when the electrodes are activated. In some cases, when stimulation is applied to the hypothalamus, lower ranking monkeys become dominant as a result. Role of FOS protein in aggression. Immunological techniques can be used to trace the path of nerve axons to different brain areas. Walker and Newman found in Syrian hamster brain that mating and agonistic behavior are controlled by separate areas of the expression of FOS protein. Adult males were allowed to interact either with a sexually receptive female or an intruder male. They were then sacrificed and their brains sectioned and stained immunologically for FOS protein. In this case, active sites in the brain could be seen microscopically. The results show that some areas of the limbic system were activated by both agonistic behavior, others are selectively activated. Now, the role of neurotransmitters in aggression. Chemical messengers or neurotransmitters are involved in the transmission of nerve impulses across synapses or across nerve muscle junctions. This can produce excitatory or inhibitory effects depending on the nature of the postsynaptic receptors. Best known, perhaps the acetylcholine, which is involved in the neuromuscular junction and in the autonomic nerve system. Norepinephrine or noradrenaline is widespread in the pons and medulla with fibers projecting anteriorly to the mid and forebrain. Dopamine and serotonin are found in the midbrain with fibers projecting anteriorly to the hypothalamus, amygdala, and striatum. There are other substances called substance P have been specifically implicated in the control of aggression. Experimental setup for delivering substance into freely moving crayfish. A cannula connected to a syringe pump is implanted in the pericardial sinus of the crayfish on the right. Changes in the fight duration with serotonin and Prozac treatment. Each pair of the bars represent the mean fight duration, the first and second 30 minutes of treatment with the agent. Pre-injection, control injection, substance injected, and post-injection. Serotonin and Prozac injection in case of free-moving crayfish. Ample evidence links serotonin to aggression. A rise in brain serotonin level accompanies lowered aggression in a variety of vertebrates from rainbow trout to lab rats. Accordingly, administration of drugs that lower brain serotonin is accompanied by increased aggression. Accordingly, administration of drugs that lower brain serotonin is accompanied by increased aggression. Among invertebrates such as crustaceans, however, the effect of these two opposite serotonin typically increase aggression. When subordinate crayfish were given injections of serotonin into their hemolymph, they increased contests and fights were more intense and lasted longer than prior to administration. When given Prozac, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, along with the serotonin injections, there were no increased in fighting. Role of genes on aggression. Role of genes on aggression. Role of genes on aggression. The synthesis of nerve structure, neurosecretions, and other compounds of under genetic control and agonistic behavior is shaped by natural selection as is any other behavior. Agonistic behavior has long been known to have a heritable basis. Artificial selection can lead to significant changes in levels of aggression within just a few generations. For example, Ebert and Hyde tested wild female house mice for aggressiveness, and by selecting high and low scoring mice, they produced two lines, one with highly aggressive females and one with passive female. The unselected control lines were, as expected, intermediate. Domestic laboratory strains of mice differ widely in aggressiveness, as do dog breeds. Fighting fish, fighting cocks, and even crickets have been artificially selected over the years of performance contests with large sums of money riding on the outcome. Genes controlling agonistic behavior may be localized on certain chromosomes. Offensive behavior in male mice, which involve bite and kick attacks on the flanks and rump of the opponent, is influenced by a region of Y chromosome. Genes in this area are hypothesized to affect synthesis of testosterone dependent phenomena as well as the perception of olfactory stimuli triggering attacks. Now, let's move on to the അടുത്തത് genes controlling agonistic behavior may be localized in certain chromosomes, and exogenous factors of aggression. Exogenous factors. Starvation is one such factor. Hungry animals fight vigorously. Chaffinches and yellow buntings fight more when hungry. Fighting is over once the food becomes available to these birds after a period of starvation. Frustration is another cause which elicits aggression. Frustration is defined as interference with the occurrence of an incited goal response at its proper time in the behavior response sequence. Frustration is another cause which elicits aggression. Frustration is defined as interference with the occurrence of an incited goal response as its proper time in the behavior sequence. Frustration is motivated for aggressive behavior and leads to fighting in hungry animals. Role of experience in aggression. Aggression is influenced by experience. Experience shapes levels of aggressiveness. Animals reared in isolation are relatively more aggressive. Absence of litter males in the prevaining stages of the piece and the post-waning stage stimulates aggression in mice. Absence of litter males in the pre-waning stage and of pairs in the post-waning stage stimulates aggression in mice. Role of appetitive aggression is regarded as one of the motivated behavior types. As such, there is a drive towards a goal. An animal which has been aroused demonstrates elevated aggression rapidly, it appears that the animals become more aggressive if reared under some situations. For example, a winning animal fights readily than those with more succession of losses. 6. The relation between sex hormones, particularly testosterone and aggression, is striking in seasonally breeding species. As the gonads increase in size, the response to environmental changes in photoperiod, rainfall, vegetation, and so to forth fighting and wandering increase as well. Most of this increase is related to the competition for breeding territory, social rank, or access of females. Key stimulus laying outside the body usually provoke aggression in animals. For example, a male stickleback fish defending its territory is aroused on seeing a rival male, which is distinguished by a red spot on its belly. The aggression is so tightly associated with red spot that a faithful model lacking the spot on its belly become unable to elicit the aggression. Contrarily, crude model have a red spot provoke aggression. Similarly, aggression in robins is elicited by the red tuft of feathers in rival. A bird devoid of it will not provoke aggression. In some monogamous species, seagulls, fighting conflicts occur in the early phases or pair formation because before a sexual bond develops. In others, courtship and copulation seems to have aggressive components as evidenced by the appealing racket mating cats make, which makes the listener wonder whether it is a fight to the death or courtship. Other carnivores also have some violent mating behavior. When polecats mate, the male grabs the female by the scruff of the neck and drags her back to his nest. Some of this aggression at the time of mating probably stems from the fact that males tend to court females rather indiscriminately, often making advances when the female are not sexually receptive. Some mammals, mainly carnivores and jagomorphs, are induced ovulators, and vigorous courtship plus copulation may be needed to trigger the release of an egg into the oviduct as copulation occurs. Adaptive significance of aggression. Now let's learn about the adaptive significance of aggression. Agonistic behavior has the adaptive significance of reducing intraspecific conflict and avoiding overt fighting, which is not in the best interest of the species. Most species channel their aggression into ritual contexts of strength and threat postures, which are universally recognized by the species. For example, flaunt animals such as deer, moose, ibex, and chamois may resort to betting contests for which ground rules exist. Only the hounds are allowed to clash and they are not used in the exposed and vulnerable flank. Now, aggression in fishes and tetrapods. Fishes living in a dense yet buoyant medium typically utilize in locomotion a complex, powerful lateral musculature controlled and toned by the action of paired and median fins. Spikes and other ornaments can be used as defensive weapons in some groups, but most fish can attack only by biting, butting, or ramming some part of the body against the opponent. Conversely, most tetrapods have moved into a medium 800 times less dense than water and have been forced to develop a supportive appendicular skeleton, a largely non metameric parietal musculature in order to support the individual during locomotion or other activities. The addition of well developed operationally flexible appendages permit many tetrapods to increase the variety of movement that can be used in signaling, attacking, and defending themselves. Despite this acute hostile encounters in fish often contain various combinations of autonomic and non-autonomic response such as fin spreading, fin fighting, opercle spreading, tail beating, mouth gaping, and pendulum movements that seem to have analogies in behavior such as wing raising, feather flashing, gaping, pecking, neck scratching, and pendulum movements in birds. And these behaviors and the less ambiguous movements such as biting, butting, slashing, grasping, kicking, pecking, wing beating, chasing, fleeing, freeing, and others all occur in various combinations in situations in which individual priorities or needs must be determined. Many of the behaviors found in territorial fights, dominance encounters, and other competitive situations seem to involve movements that serve either to increase the apparent size of the actor or to expose specially colored structure or potentially dangerous weapons. Conversely, behavior occurring in submissive or subordinate individual often tends to decrease apparent size or obscure dangerous or streamingly colored structures. For example, Darwin pointed to the extreme difference in posture between a hostile dog and the same animal in a humble and affectionate frame of mind. A similar contrast is seen in the aggression and animal has seen in the case of gulls, where the beak is shown off in aggressive displays but is hidden by turning the head away in appeasing ones. Aggression and submission in dog was explained by the principle of Darwin, antithesis of Darwin. The same dog is portrayed above approaching another dog with hostile intention and below in humble and affectionate frame of mind. Aggressive and animal husbandry. Aggression and animal husbandry. The knowledge of aggression and its causes in animals is of great value from the point of farm livestock. A knowledge of stimuli which provoke aggressive behavior in different animals helps humans for domestication. A careful planning with the view of stimuli that elicits aggression will help keep animals so that they do not fight with one another. For example, the animals not able to live close may be separated by partitioning through opaque sites. Now let's learn about the game theory model, game theory and animal contexts. Mayant, Smith, and Price independently developed a model of how displays rather than all-out fighting could be selected for at the level of individual. During agonistic encounters, the decision about whether to attack, display, or flee depends on what the other participants does. Various alternative courses of action are called strategies. The participant's choice of strategy is assumed to be heritable. The outcome of each game is determined by a payoff matrix or a predetermined set of outcomes. But this game theory model is not related with aggression. So that's all about summary of aggression. Thank you.